on, let's declare this. If the stars were made to worship, so will I. If the mountains bow in reverence, so will I. If the oceans roar your greatness, so will I. For if everything exists to lift you high, so will I. Oh, if the wind goes where you send it, so will I. Oh, if the rocks cry out in silence, so will I. Oh, if the sun with all our praises still falls short, then we'll sing again 100 billion times. God of salvation, you chased down my heart through all of my failure and pride. On a hill you created, light of the world, abandoned in darkness to die. But as you speak, come on, 100 billion failures that disappeared. Oh, where you lost your life so I could find it here. If you left the grave behind you, so will I. I can see your heart in everything you've done. Every part designed in a work of art called love. If you gladly chose surrender, so will I. I could see your heart in a billion different ways. Every precious one, a child you died to save. Oh, if you gave me life to love them, so will oh, we give it all to you. We give it all to lift up your name, Lord. Oh, if you gave me life to love them, so will I. Like you would again 100 billion times. But one measure could amount to your desire. You're the one who never leaves the one behind. Come on, let's give him praise. Come on.
Hey guys, Michael J. Crawford, the Anti-Trekker here. Sorry if I sound a little off. I'm still not feeling that great. Man, my sinuses this year are just killing me. I'm so done with 2020. Anyway, first of all, good to see you guys. And, you know, one of those things at the church that I go to, we do something called expository teaching. I've mentioned it before. And what that means is that, you know, the most common way of examining the Bible from a scholarly perspective is something called hermeneutics. And using hermeneutics, you usually use the Bible, you use various scriptures in the Bible to explain and define and reinforce other scriptures in the Bible. So, for example, you might go to a verse in Leviticus about marriage, and then you immediately do another verse about marriage that from the book of Matthew, and then you do another book of marriage from the book of Psalms, and you kind of tie it up to create a overall picture. The advantage to hermeneutics is that you can construct a very effective message on almost any topic. The disadvantage of hermeneutics is that you can manipulate it in order to make the Bible appear to have a narrative that it may not completely have. Now, with expository teaching, the way that we do it, it has the disadvantage that you can't just choose, like the pastor doesn't choose a topic each week to cover and then do some research and write a sermon based on that topic. Instead, we work through entire books of the Bible without skipping anything. And so the uncomfortable stuff, the boring stuff, everything that's there. And so each week, the sermon is based on where we are in the Bible, not what the flavor of the day is, not what the topic of discussion may be. And so it's a different way of approaching it, but I like the fact that when doing it that way, you don't skip over anything and you get things in a better context. So why am I bringing all this up? Because I've talked about it before a little bit, and that's not like, it's not like I'm trying to educate people on how to read the Bible. And the fact of the matter is that, you notice the name of this live stream, Nothing New Under the Sun, and we'll play on words with the word sun. But the funny thing is that we make arguments or statements, and we tend to think of them as contemporary, without realizing that sometimes these statements are hundreds, if not thousands, of years old. And when we were last night, it just kind of hit me while we were at church last night, because there were two things in one very short section, both of which I've used in casual conversation very, very recently. And so, and that is we're working on the book of Matthew. We've been in the book of Matthew for months. Because we usually do between a half a chapter to a chapter each week, which means, and we're in the 23rd chapter, so you can do the math. But in the beginning of Matthew chapter 23, Jesus is talking about the Pharisees, who are the religious leaders of the day. And actually, it's kind of interesting because if you break it down, you can look at like the Pharisees is almost like what in the modern vernacular you would call the religious right, as opposed to the Sadducees would be more like the more liberal church out there. But anyway, the Pharisees were just trying to trick Jesus with some trick questions, and that backfired on him and everything. But then Jesus addresses the crowd when talking about the Pharisees, and he says that he starts out chapter 23 by saying that he says that the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat, so you must be careful to do everything they tell you. Now, first and foremost, that is an indictment on people that refuse to follow authority because they disagree with that authority. All right. Look, I'm not here to stump speech for Trump or Biden or any other presidential candidate. Doesn't matter who wins. They're still the president of the United States. Doesn't matter if it's Trump. Doesn't matter if it's Biden. All right. And the problem is we have no respect for authority anymore. And so you have half the country that thinks that the current president is the savior. The other half thinks that he is Satan. And those people were simply reversed during the Obama administration. And it's getting completely out of hand. And honestly, we need, they sit on the seat of Moses, as Christ would say. Now, granted, obviously, in the case of the president, he's not literally sitting in the position of a prophet, but he is in a position of authority. But we do need to be careful about, we are called to follow that authority. However, and this is the flip side of that. It says, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. Now, a couple of things there. First of all, hey, I'm sorry. You could say that about a lot of people in leadership positions right now. They may say the right things, they may tell you the correct things, but then you look at their personal lives and it's a mess, right? And how many times do people try to discredit a person in authority because they've done something counter to whatever it is that they say, right? So so when you hear about a congressman or a senator or whatever having an affair or breaking the law in some way, then that's obviously not okay, but that doesn't mean that they're not in authority. But the interesting thing there, the thing that kind of jumped out, is the fact that practice what you preach is an expression that people still use today, right? And it's a fairly common expression. And the idea of don't be a hypocrite, right? Don't say one thing and do another. Well, this is a 2,000-year-old phrase. But most people, a lot of common vernacular actually comes straight out of the Bible, and a lot of people don't realize it. And in fact, the interesting thing is this is another one. This is one I used very, very recently in a conversation with someone. They say that they tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. How many times have you used the expression, they're not willing to lift a finger? I had no idea that dates all the way back to the book of Matthew. So that's, to me, that's just kind of interesting because people think that, it's a 2,000-year-old book, therefore not relevant. I beg to differ, because we're still using phrases from this today, and we think that we came up with them. So no, it is quite relevant, and it is actually, and there's a lot of good information there. Not some major sermonizing by me here. I just found that interesting, is all. Anyway, today I'm just going to try to focus on the chat, hang out as long as I can. Like I said, I'm not feeling very good, but I also want to, if I'm able tonight, I'm going to do a live stream because I wasn't able to do one on Friday. It's been a rough week, I'm not going to lie. Trusted was first in the house, says, good morning, hope your Sunday is off to a good start. Well, I always enjoy hanging out with you guys, so yes. Valor says, good morning, hope you're doing well. How's Mrs. Anchecker? She's fine. She and I just walked the dogs, and she is now enjoying her morning coffee and probably either watching the news or doing her Bible study, one of the two. And Get It Got It Good says, good morning, how you doing? Get It Got It Good. Nice to see you. Oh, and Andre's here from Bosnia. Good to see you, Andre. Lord Seth, good to see you, Lord Seth. Says, hey man, hope you're well. If I had a month Thursday, my best friend collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. She is home now. LOL. What's mentally stability? How does it taste? Seth, I have no idea what it feels like because, yeah, I'm with you. My life has been absolutely crazy as of late. Some of the stuff you guys know about, some of the stuff I choose not to share on YouTube. But it is, yeah, life is sucks. I am so looking forward to 2020 just being done. Jeff Franklin says, good morning, and check it last. No. Let's see. And Stanley says, Bob fathered Steve, who fathered Bill, who fathered Stan, who was the father of Jim. Oh, I see you were saying the as far as the genealogies of the Bible. No, we don't skip them. And I'm not going to lie, those days, it's funny because Corey will even start out and say, look, this is not the most exciting read here, but here we're going to get into this. And the thing is that there usually is, he doesn't necessarily like put a lot of emphasis on the individual names. Like he'll read through the passage relatively quickly. Like normally we may get through, say 30 actual scriptures a day, right, as they're numbered. Just throwing a random number out there. But on a day where we're doing genealogy, we might get through 100 of them because there's just not that much meat in the genealogy itself. But then what he'll focus on when he's teaching is what is the point of that genealogy? Why is it there? Why is it important in cultural context? And so, no, we do not skip it, even the boring stuff. And even some of the stuff that people don't like to talk about very much, like sexual identity and stuff like that, because that stuff is in the Bible, and some people are very uncomfortable discussing it. Charles says there's a massive Among Us hack yesterday where a person named Eric Loris spamming links and Trump 2020. Well, I'm sorry about that. I don't play. I don't play Among Us, so I have the game, but I've never played it with anybody yet. So it looks like a fun game, but I'm sorry if that happened. And TOS is in the house, says, praise the Lord. How you doing, TOS? Michael says, good morning, Anti-Trekker and other Trekkies. How you doing, Michael? Mountains of Elysium says, greetings, Anti-Trekker and fellow nerds. Free Auntie. Auntie is actually, she's free as good dog could be. In fact, she was up here with me when I was getting the show set up, and then she went downstairs. So, yeah, she is completely free. Valor says, Viv was mocked and verbally attacked by some wannabe Christians from her ex-church because she's pagan. She told them off and said that they were fake Christians. That made them angry. Well, you know, the funny thing is, Valor, first of all, as far as if someone has a different set of beliefs than you, that doesn't, you know, obviously I'm not going to agree with that belief. That being said, that doesn't mean I have to be a dick to that person. And in fact, the Bible says the exact opposite. You know, one of the things that we did cover last night from Matthew chapter 22 is one of the most well-known within the church, one of the most well-known passages of scripture there is, which is what is the greatest commandment. And the greatest commandment is very simple. It's to love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and which, by the way, means that you should love God with your emotions, with your heart, with your spirit, your soul, and with your intellect, right? It doesn't mean that it's just about the feels. It's about everything. But then he goes on to say the second, which is like it, meaning that there are two primary commandments, and that second primary commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. And that does not mean simply people who are Christians. That means humanity, the greater humanity, all of mankind. And so when a Christian is attacking a person for not being a Christian, they are absolutely being a hypocrite 100% of the time. And it doesn't matter what the attack is based on. It can be based on sexual orientation. It can be based on religious preference. It can be based on any topic you could possibly think of. It is wrong. Because honestly, and it's funny because it's... Oh, and Alexander, thank you so much.
Syrian Muslim wife born in USSR is the best choice.
Thank you, Alexander, and I know she is the best choice for you, my friend. I absolutely know that. But when we, as a Christian, it's said in the Bible over and over and over that we should not expect non-Christians to behave like Christians because they're non-Christians, right? If you are, it would be like, you know, here, I live in the United States of America. I do not expect my good friend Josef in Slovakia to follow the laws of the United States of America. Why? Because he lives in Slovakia, right? Andre in Bosnia lives in Bosnia, not the United States. So I would expect Andre to follow the rules of Bosnia, not the United States. I don't know what those rules are, but I would hope that those rules are followed, you know? And so we need to stop passing judgment on people just because we disagree with something they say or do. That being said, we do not compromise our beliefs, right? So if if I was sitting there with you and your wife Valor and we were talking about religion, I'm not going to simply say, well, I think paganism is awesome, because I don't. But I'm also not going to say that Viv is a bad person because she may disagree with me on that. Michael says, ironically, Anti-Trigger and TJ, the amazing atheist, make me want to grow my hair and beard out. Both look good with the hairs. Well, thank you. I used to, me and TJ have talked a couple of times many, many years ago. And back when I was just doing the Christian thing on YouTube. And you know what? Sometimes he's a complete jerk, and sometimes he's a very reasonable guy. I haven't seen him in a few years, so I don't know what he's doing nowadays. Everybody who has played the game was mad. It's not the Among Us thing. That sucks. Kuroganite is in the house. That just makes me shudder. Stan Lee says, yeah, when I tried reading the Bible straight through, I got stuck on those long genealogy sections. Well, honestly, and that's the problem with the Bible is like people, the biggest mistake you can make with the Bible, like if you're trying to understand Christianity, is to just try to read the Bible straight through. Because people think the Bible is a book. It's not. It's a collection of some 66 books. And each book covers different specific topics. Some are historical, some are legal, some are poetic, and some are apocryphal, or not apocryphal, but apocalyptic. And so the apocryphal books aren't in the Bible. And so these books all cover different things, and but they all have a central theme, which is of course God. And honestly, if you really want to understand the core of Christianity, the best place to start would be the 4 gospel books, the first 4 books of the New Testament, the first of which is Matthew. And Matthew is a great place to start because it's a very straightforward book. It's not there's not a whole lot of stuff that is hard to follow. And so... But yeah, you start reading this, and Jim Bob begat James, and James begat Frank, and Frank, And Sean, thank you so much.
A Christian. Someone who hurts another due to them being different is not. The Good Samaritan was more of a Christian than the Christians.
And Lore Appreciation Society. Oh, jeez.
Law 2020. Free nipple grease for everyone. Law Bond, please.
Wow. We'll play Lore Bond in a little bit. Let me get through some more of the chat. And oh man, you could tell it's the internet when you're talking about religion and somebody offers free nipple grease. But thank you, Sean and Lore Appreciation Society. And the funny thing about the Good Samaritan is that unfortunately, and I'm sure you know this, Sean, but the biggest problem with the Good Samaritan parable is that it doesn't have the impact today that it did back then. In fact, if you were to rewrite that parable today, you would say something like the good white supremacist, or the good Antiphon, or something like that, because the idea was that a Samaritan was an absolute lowlife, and that was common knowledge at the time. Jews did not associate with Samaritans, right? And this message was given to Jews, and so when Christ was talking about, and then a Samaritan comes by, they were like, ugh, it would be like if you were at a Black Lives Matter rally, and you said, and then a white supremacist walked in, right? And all of a sudden, you would get the same kind of reaction. That's what the Samaritan is supposed to represent, is this is the lowest of the low. And what did he do? He did the right thing, right? And then, so who is this guy's neighbor? It was the Samaritan. And that was the point of that story is, in fact, one of those things that, just like we were talking about with what Viv was going through and stuff, is the idea that we are called to love our fellow man regardless of our differences. It does not matter. And the ironic thing about all this is that while a lot of people like to bash religion because of wars and other horrible things that have been done in the name of God, and it's fair points, I'm sure. But the interesting thing is that if people actually just followed that one basic tenet from Christ, Love God and love humanity. If nothing else in the Bible mattered, and in fact, Christ even says everything else in the Bible is built on those two premises. But if, in fact, people could just do those two things, love God and love their neighbor. Heck, if they could only do one, love their neighbor, right? If you just loved fellow man, imagine what this world would be like compared to what it is right now. Imagine what 2020 would be like if people took seriously the idea of loving their fellow man. And no snide comments, please, about either, Trump or Antifa or any of, you understand what I'm saying, because we are all guilty of it. As soon as we start pointing the finger at a specific group, guess what? We're doing it. So we need to take a chill pill, and we need to, sit back and realize that, yeah, you know what? There is a better way. All right, back to it. Sorry, my sinuses are stopped up, but I'm going to go as long as I can. Lord Seth says, Jeff and Anti-Checker, she needs surgery. They sent, excuse me, they sent her home. She's on uber strong painkillers. She's out of at least 6 times a week. And this is my cousin died week before, so you wonder how I am preachy. Man, Lord Seth, I know you're going through a lot. And so don't even stress it. Guy from Red Bank says not a Trekkie. Well, you don't have to be a Trekkie. Just because I am doesn't mean that's what everybody has to be. And Charles says, call them Satan worshipers. The funny thing about Satanism is that, believe me, if you want to get into what is satanic, it's not hard to find because it is everywhere. The core of satanic belief is belief in self. That's what it's all about. And that's what causes all these problems, because we elevate ourselves, and when we elevate ourselves, we think of ourselves as better than others. And that's what it's basically making ourselves God, to believe that we are the ultimate authority in our lives. And I know some of you, even some of you that have professed to be Christians of one flavor or another, will say, but I'm in control of my life. No. That is satanic. Straight up satanic. And it goes all the way back to the book of Genesis. That was the first thing the devil did. Was, you want to be like God? Don't listen to him. Eat that fruit. Odd Librarian Out says, hope you feel better soon. I had the best turn of my outdoor story time yesterday. 2 families. Can't wait for the end of this pandemic. Oh, man, I am so done with this pandemic. I really want it to be over. But not for me, like my social life or anything. I don't really get out much. But honestly, I feel bad. I see so many people that are struggling, being stuck at home, and I want them to be able to enjoy their lives. Carlos says, I like how you show how it's relevant today and explain the meaning of what it says. It can be hard to understand when it's set so far in the past to a modern day environment. I know, Carlo, and the funny thing about that is that if that's one of the reasons I love the church that I go to, is because Corey, our senior pastor, is very good at digging up the context of it. But that's also why we go through the Bible the way that we do. That's why we don't do the hermeneutic style of preaching, because of the fact that we don't want to miss important stuff. And it forces Corey, when he, if this coming weekend, week from today, he's going to be preaching on Matthew chapter 23, because we only did the first couple of verses of Matthew 23 last night. And so he already knows exactly what he's going to be preaching on, which means that now all he has to do is focus on the historical context and the deeper meaning of that particular passage, rather than to try and construct a message that fits his agenda. And that, to me, is a far superior way to teach. Robert says, hello, today, that respect for authority. Do you know about the book of Maccabees? I do not. So safe to say that Viv is not a happy person at the moment. Well, I'm truly sorry, Valor, and so give her a hug for me. Lord Seth says, finding it hard to see God even exists right now. I understand that, Lord Seth. He does, but it's, the thing about it, and this is, it's not like we're not told about this in advance, because I mean, Christ himself says, in this world there will be trouble. You are going to struggle, you are going to suffer. There is no promise in the Bible that you will have a pleasant and fortuitous life. What about if God set a galaxy class to the Gamma Quadrant and wasn't in its territory? That would be very odd. And if that was actually in the Bible, I think it would be proof that Gene Roddenberry was in fact not whoever came up with the galaxy class ship was a prophet. Yosef!
If I didn't love myself, I could not love others.
Yosef, good to see you. And by the way, I used you as an example earlier. Don't know if you saw that. But you know what? The funny thing is, it sounds like I'm sure you didn't mean it quite this way, but it's 100% true. There's a good pastor friend of mine in Portland, Oregon, who did a message called The Hidden Commandment. And that is exactly it, because if when Christ says, and by the way, Christ was quoting the book of Leviticus when he said that to love your neighbors as yourself. But so that's that goes back many hundreds of years before even the New Testament. But if you do not love yourself, how can you love your neighbors like yourself? Right? And so what he was talking about, there is actually kind of a hidden commandment in there, which is that you do have to have a certain level of self-love. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you elevate yourself above others. That's, that's self-righteousness. But the interesting thing about that is that we do need to recognize, and I understand, and I know I'm picking on you a little, Yosef, but if you're not a believer in the supernatural, this part would be meaningless to you. But, and Alexander with another $2.
Hooters is a paradise, certainly created by God.
All right, Alexander. I don't know that I would agree with you on that. I've never been to a Hooters, and quite frankly, not interested in them, but I'll take your word. So, the love of self becomes very, very important because if you don't care about yourself, you're not going to have any empathy for others. But it also comes back to, well, why? Why should I love all of humanity? Because humanity is a direct reflection of God. That man was created in God's image. And therefore, it doesn't matter if you like that person or not like that person. That person is a reflection of God and deserves your love and your respect. Now, you don't have to agree with them. You can, and sometimes we'll have knockdown, drag-out fights, because, I mean, there are people here that for some reason think that Star Trek The Next Generation is better than Star Trek The Original Series. And while they're wrong, and I will fight them all day on that, that doesn't mean I'm going to hate them for it. And, by the way, here comes my subtle message to members of the Fandom Menace. It also doesn't mean that, Alex Kurtzman is a bad person just because he produced some Star Trek that most of us do not like. So, there is that. Valor says, nibble on the bear will clear those problems right up. I seriously thought about it. Oh, man. I seriously thought about it. Bird of Prey says, I can't believe Antchecker gave the fleas to Auntie and blamed this dog. Yeah, I can't believe you're saying that, Bird. Get It Got It Good says, thoughts on angels. Cherubim, not Valentine's cherub. No. Multi-head beast man. Seraphim, multi-wing, multi-eye creature. Ezekiel is a fun read. There's some very interesting imagery, both in the Old Testament and in Revelation, specifically of the New Testament, that describes these very bizarre creatures. And the problem is that it becomes difficult to tell how much of it is a literal description of a creature and how much of it is a symbolic description of what this creature represents. And, honestly, I don't, because of the fact that it doesn't impact my day-to-day life, I don't get too obsessed with it. I think they're an interesting concept, but I don't know one way or another whether there's supposed to be a literal description. I do know that when angels visit people in the Bible, they generally resemble people. And so the only time, we see a couple of descriptions of these very bizarre creatures, like in Revelation, the ones that circle the throne and stuff like that. And, I don't know if that's what they actually look like or not. But if it is, wow. Lot of fantasy nerds are going to be very happy in heaven. That's... Carlos says, if your job was to fire a nuclear weapon, you were told would you fire it knowing the destruction to follow, or would you disobey the order? How would the Bible apply? That's a tough one, Carlo. That is a very tough one. And I don't know. Fortunately, that's not my job.
Space controls the universe.
Fine, well, throw in free tassels too. Just play the dang video.
All right, so the Lore Appreciation Society is getting very desperate to see Lore. And Andre, thank you so much for another $5.
The mission in Lone Tree, Colorado is very close to be a success. It's a fact. We never had been that close to succeed the mission. Very, very close.
But I don't know what the mission is. When are you going to tell us what this mission is in Colorado? I'm very curious about that, actually. And I'm not sure what Jeff means by I'm truly at fault for that, so let that go. So I will, okay, so because Lore Appreciation Society is so desperate to see it, and I need to clear out my sinuses real quick. Anyway, I'll be right back, so while I suffer, I'll let you suffer along with me.
I may have a It's not clean. Repeat, I do not have a clean Take the bloody
That's just so wrong. So there you go, Lore Appreciation Society. Lord says, me and the guys on Discord are all meeting up 2022. I promise I would make a stew for 15 people and a baby. That is something to look forward to. In Houston, I think I will ignite. If you're so you're saying you're coming to Houston, Lord Seth, in 2022? Because if that is true, man, count me in. Because one way or another, I'll figure out a way to make it there. Hermeneutical preaching is great, but it isn't complete safeguard against preaching with an agenda. The Pharisees knew the letter of the law, but used it to prop themselves up. Exactly, and that is a major problem in religion, is that people tend to try to manipulate, in fact, I think that Commander Decker in Star Trek The Motion Picture said it the best. We all create God in our own image. Valor says, it's ironic when witches were accused of having orgies with the devil is in fact that witches of old never believed in the devil, so kind of hard to have sex parties with an imaginary being. Well, I'm not an expert on Wiccanism or anything, so I don't know what they do or do not believe. I do know, though, that, throwing somebody up on a stake and burning them, yeah, not exactly a good idea.
Must flow.
And Alexander,
Don't do
thank
the
you.
Momo challenge. Please don't do it.
I promise you, Alexander, I have no interest in doing the Momo challenge. And in fact, the only time I ever think about the Momo
Looks
challenge
like
is
I'm a
when you're
tad
here.
late pardon for that. Had a wild and severe storm pass and left a few trinkets in the form of small golf ball hail. What I miss.
Wow. Golf ball hail. That's something, Fed. I tell you, I've never had hail of that magnitude where I've lived. Not a whole lot, talking about how to study the Bible, talking about my sinuses, talking about naked lore for some reason. But yeah. And Robert says, the book of Maccabees was once included in the Bible. It was where the origin of Hanukkah, I assume is that Hanukkah came from. It teaches it's okay to overthrow an ungodly authority over us. Gotcha. Well, there's a different, as far as what I can see, when you examine Scripture, the only time the Bible really seems to endorse breaking the law is if the law is something that is directly contradictory to God's will. And so, but you have to be pretty darn sure of that, right? So it's not like I don't think that, even then, you have to look at how are you going to do it, right? Are you going to stage an outright rebellion? When Christ was walking the earth, the Romans had a complete military occupation of Israel, and Christ did not encourage revolution. So there, it's one of those things that, just because it's quote unquote ungodly doesn't necessarily mean that it's not meant to be there. But I would say that you have to be absolutely sure. But so, for example, if let's say the government passed a law saying that you had to pray to the president of the United States or something. Okay, now that would be kind of weird for the government to do that, especially since our government has a specific constitutional amendment forbidding that kind of thing. But if that did happen, then, well, we'd have problems. And what was that? Let me see. Let's see. Yes, I see that. I will respond to you about that later after the show. Anyway, should we forgive YouTube for false copyright claims? Well, YouTube technically doesn't file the false copyright claims. Their system is used to file them. So even though I do not like the way that Google administers their stuff, and it's not a matter of forgiveness, because remember, Google is not a person. And in fact, this is something that I also, I talk about a lot as far as like when we fight about how horrible, say, Kathleen Kennedy or Ryan Johnson or Alex Kurtzman or these people are. It's not about the person; it's about the institution, right? So our battle is not with Alex Kurtzman. Our battle is with bad Star Trek. And by extension, that could mean Bad Robot. It could mean CBS. It could mean, but it's not Alex Kurtzman. We need to focus the battle on what the battle should really be about. Valor says, speaking Star Trek Discovery, Tom from Mead actually agreed with many of your points for episode 2 when they covered it. I actually shocked that the Phantom Menace didn't roast him for saying episode 2 was somewhat good. Well, here's the problem, you see, is that Tom, if Tom says that, of course, Tom is a well-respected member of the Phantom Menace. If I say that, then, of course, I'm a shill. And the reason is because I've said nice things about bad Trek before. And so, where Tom very rarely does. And I'm sure that Tom will be more than happy to get back on the Michael Burnham hate train next week. And don't get me wrong, I love Tom. He's a great guy. But The Phantom Menace is an inherently hypocritical organization, or lack of organization, because it's not, and of course they can always hide behind the fact that, well, we're not an official organization. It's not like there's a membership card or rule book for being a part of the Phantom Menace. But if basically, if you don't tout the party line, which is hate on these particular groups, hate on these particular people, then you are not welcome. And since I've kind of given up on the hate train part of it, I'm not particularly welcome. But that's okay. I don't begrudge them. I'm still an official member of the Legion of Doomcock, so I'm all right. Alexander's beating Momo the Challenger in Lone Tree, Colorado. Oh, that makes sense. Yes. Jeff says, no, I show naked lore in church life. My eyes. Sorry. I was paid to do it, and I am a greedy bastard. If nothing else, I'm honest. It's way too early in the morning for naked lore. On second thought, there's no good time for naked lore. That's true. Carlos says, do you think humanity has changed for the better or gotten worse or the same as biblical days? I would say surprisingly the same. It's funny because, and that's why kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier, a lot of the things that we think are modern problems are in the freaking Bible. And so that's the amazing thing, is people have not changed all that much. Technology has improved, but I don't see a significant shift in humanity. People are just as hypocritical as they always were. And people, it's just that people have tools like the internet where they can be dicks and be anonymous. That didn't exist back then. But you better believe that the Pharisees would have been all over Instagram had that existed back then. Let's see. Jeff says, love him as a fellow human hybrid, yes, but not in his naked form. Are you talking about lore? That's wrong. Tim says, I could be fuzzy on my history, but I thought that burning at the stake was done to witches, not by them. Did I say by them? I thought I meant to them, but and I don't, I don't believe in that kind of thing, but hey, we can argue about that another day. Lord Seth says, my friend is Wicca, and we have a lovely discussion, and another friend joined in and asked if I'd look at his church. I said no. Well, you know what? I don't have a problem with people that are, I don't have a problem with the people that are Wiccan. I just, I don't see any benefit to being Wiccan myself. But hey, to each their own, although I will still encourage people that I think that the ultimate truth is out there. And I do believe very strongly in the scripture that says that if you seek, you will find. If you knock, the door will be open. It doesn't say when, just that you will. And that's why more than anything else, more than I'm concerned about, if you're an atheist or a Wiccan or a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim or anything else, I'm less concerned about that than with where's your heart? Are you seeking the truth no matter where it leads? Or are you running away from it? So that's, yeah. Burnt steak is very bad, very, very bad. Yes, I would dare say that I agree. What's a Doomcock sounds painful. It's horrible, Carlo. Lord says I like Doomcock, man, his new Discord, the rules but man, his new Discord, the rules I left. I have not been to his Discord. I didn't know he did anything there. Mr. Londell says, here we go again. Poor Antrekker, pillared by the pillar. Why are you throwing words at me I can't read at this time of the day? Pillared by the powers that be? What? Either that's a typo or, man, my brain is not processing that word. Let me see. Pillory, past tense. Put someone in a pillory to attack or ridicule publicly. Ah, okay. I'm not saying that I'm being attacked or ridiculed publicly, so Mr. Lundell, whatever. I do think that there are problems in the Phantom Menace, but I'm not hating on anybody, and as far as I know, they don't hate me, so yeah. Good morning, Trigger. Hell yeah, get off the hate train and just go the love train. Yes, I am all about the love train. Let's see. And Fed says, funny enough, orthodoxy suggests that sin is needed in the world in order to be worked past. And Alexander with another $2. Thank you.
In seeking the truth. She's still in Moscow now.
But you're wrong about that, Alexander. No, she may be in Moscow, but she is not the truth. She is a person. And that's actually something that we talked about a little bit. Your faith should not be in a person. Not in a human, at least. Every single person will let you down, sooner or later. Every single one will, because we are human. We are not perfect. Even the universe itself is temporary. So, but I don't put my faith in a person, because then you're just setting yourself up to fail. I didn't realize Larry Lowe is such a big boy until I watched his first Contact video compilation. Hope he's okay. I didn't see that video, but as far as I know, he's fine. So he said some nice things about me recently, which is very nice of him. I do appreciate that. We get a Boogeyman event every 10 years or so. In 2029, it will be Apophis. Okay. Steak should be medium rare. I tend to agree with you on that. Fed says, funny enough, that's where I was saying. Orthodoxy suggests that sin is needed in the world in order to be worked past. Take in point, the Orthodox do not seek to ban alcohol, even though it's sinful. Well, in that respect, I don't know about their philosophy behind it, but I agree with them on the principle in that I don't think that sin should be illegal, right? Because, for example, if let's say that you get this hardcore Christian in office, and they rewrite the whole of American law to conform 100% with the Bible, which means that everything that is against the rules of the Bible in some way, shape, or form are now illegal. So, for example, it becomes illegal to take the Lord's name in vain. Now, does that make people good? No. It forces them to behave in a specific way, but it does not make them good. Or as the old adage is, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. You cannot force someone. I mean, you can force someone to behave in a certain way, but you can't force someone to believe in a certain way in a genuine manner. You're basically trying to rob them of the greatest gift that there is, which is free will. And what is the point? I think that the potential of sin must exist for the world to work. And in fact, that's, like some people say how stupid, regardless of whether you think it's literal or allegorical, people say how stupid was it to put that tree in the middle of the Garden of Eden. But if the potential for Adam and Eve to fail wasn't there, then there would be no victory. If there's no such thing as failure, there's no such thing as victory. And the $2 word, gay him every time. Well, it didn't, or gay. I assume you mean get him every time. Hey, you know what, Mr. Lundell? I never said I was a thesaurus. Or perhaps it's better to say temptation is required in the world in order to be refused. I think that's a better way of phrasing it, because yes, without even Jesus was tempted, and if there was nothing to be tempted by, then we'd just be a bunch of robots, right? Someone gave me a witch book, and I read it. Half the book was about how evil Christianity is. Since then, I've completely disregarded witch stuff. Well, and that's a problem. I don't know about Wiccanism, but Wiccanism, is that even a word? But when people tend to, they say, oh, well, here's what I believe, and then they go into why the other belief is wrong. Then you're not telling me what you believe. You're telling me why you don't like someone else. And that, to me, immediately turns me off. That's why I don't like how many times in presidential debates. Now, granted, this year has been particularly atrocious. But even before this year, every time we've had presidential elections, these debates, dating back as far as I can remember. They would ask the person a question, and then the focus of their answer would be about how wrong the other person is, rather than what they believe, what they want to do, what they care about. They would always try to rip down the other guy, because that's an easier line of attack. Because you don't have to stand for anything if you can just show that what the other person stands for is bad. Well, what's your opinion on lines of kings after God anointed their ancestors, aka divine right of rule? Well, I don't really give much credence to it, Lord Seth, mainly because of the fact that, number one, God didn't even want to establish kings. It was the Jews that insisted upon having them. And two, the line of kings ended after, the Roman occupation of Israel. So it's irrelevant in that context. And Stress-Free K says, I see New Trek as having an almost religious-like veneration for the Federation this year. Well, that could be an interesting concept, though. That's what I'm curious to see where they go with it. Because if the Federation, because we always tend to glorify things of the past. I mean, even again, not trying to pick on Trump or his supporters, but make America great again. We try to think that, the good old days, without stopping to think that the good old days weren't necessarily that good. Right? The people were always struggling, and there were other problems. You might say, well, this problem didn't exist. Yeah, but there were some other problems that were pretty serious back then, and that's part of the reason that some people accuse Trump and his supporters of being insensitive at the very best, or straight up racist at the worst, when it comes to attitudes about minorities. Because when they start talking about make America great again, they're talking about times when institutionalized racism was the norm. And that's not something that some people want to go back to. Now, I understand that that's not specifically what they're talking about, but they also don't address that, and Trump does a horrible job, and, I mean, let's be real, he does a horrible job at trying to negate that when they say, hey, will you denounce this group? Yeah, sure. Yeah, they're bad, I guess. And that's about as harsh as he'll get. That doesn't help his case. And so when we start, and so going back to the Trek thing, when we start thinking about this wonderful past, so these people are thinking about the good old days of the Federation, and so, can they bring back that idea? Well, there are concepts about history that are awesome. Like, if you look at the concept behind the Constitution of the United States, it's beautiful. The execution
controls the universe.
Conan never hides his beliefs. War, wine, women.
That's true. Conan does not hide his beliefs, but if we were all like Conan, then most of us would be dead. If I bring kinder eggs to America, the feds will get called and I will get thrown in jail. What? You and murdered my family. I brought a kid a chocolate-covered toy. Lord Seth, I have no idea what that means. Mr. Captain says, how do you feel about people saying that America has lost its Christian way? Didn't your founders intend America to be non-religious, especially saying separation of church and state? Actually, funny you should say that, Mr. Captain. First of all, you will not find the term separation of church and state in the Constitution at all. That is a myth. All right, the separation of church and state, the concept of the separation of church and state came much, much later, when people were trying to say that because what the Constitution does say is that the federal government does not have the right to establish a federal religion, nor can it prevent the free exercise of religion. That's the extent of it. Now, it doesn't mean because people now take that to mean that if a politician says a prayer at their own breakfast, that they're somehow violating the separation of church and state. If a school allows a group of kids to have a prayer group, that's a violation of the separation of church and state. That's a bunch of BS. What it says is that the state cannot establish a religion, nor can it prevent religion from being practiced. That's it. And a school allowing a group of students to pray is not the school establishing a religion. But people want to get all up in arms about that kind of thing. But as far as the way that the funny thing is the way that the founding fathers framed this country was the idea that the country would allow for people to believe whatever they wanted to believe, that we were a country based primarily on individual liberty, which is completely lost. And the funny thing is nobody even talks about liberty in any kind of significant way anymore because it doesn't exist. Isaiah says, make Trek great again. I would agree with that. Anyway, Fed says, reason why I think the Make America Great Again is so appealing is because those whom are looking to the future seem to offer nothing of greatness and hope and general solid. I think why it's so appealing is that those whom are looking to the future seem to offer nothing of greatness and hope and general solid improvement. Yeah, I get that, but the problem is that if what you're going to do is try to say that, hey, things were great at this point in time, and then immediately one group or another that was during that time oppressed or otherwise having trouble would say, well, wait a minute, it wasn't great for everybody, but that's just the way that people say. Lord Seth says, my friend is having problems with that. She can't go to church because of Corona, and she's saying it's unconstitutional. It's funny you should say that, Lord Seth. So I don't know why your friend can't go to church, because at least in the United States right now, I don't know of any states where church is shut down. I don't know about over on your side of the pond. But, people get so pissy about the mask thing, right? And this is something that I will tell you, I never thought I would see the day. Corey, our senior pastor at our church, he is one of the most civil guys you'll ever talk to. And he is one of those guys, he makes Life with Matthew seem like a straight up jerk. All right. That Corey is just one of the nicest guys on the planet. And so Corey actually said during the service last night that he is sick of the SHIT. He said that exactly like that. He said the word, SHIT. I was shocked. Never heard that from the pulpit before. And he was talking about the mask thing, because here's the problem. People bitch and moan, and they're, and people across this country are doing it right now. You have thousands and thousands of people who are walking into stores where the stores say, please wear a mask, and they refuse to wear a mask, and they literally spit in the face of people. They cause all sorts of problems. They're screaming, my rights, my rights, my rights. So, first of all, BS. It's not your right. And in fact, there was a mask requirement during the Spanish effing flu in the United States of America. Look it up. So this isn't even the first time. Besides that, all right, this is a public health issue. And the way that Corey put it was that we have at our church 65, we're a fairly large church. We have 65 families in which these families have severely physically disabled children that have compromised immune systems and can die from things like the common flu. And you want to bitch about wearing a mask and expose these kids to coronavirus. F you. I'm sorry. It's, and don't get me wrong. I'm as far as, look, I get it. It's inconvenient. Nobody wants to wear a mask. Nobody likes wearing a mask. But you know what? Get over it. Once it's over, it's over. For right now, and it's not about whether the mask is 100% works. Obviously, it's not 100%. But if it mitigates it to a certain extent, fine. Even if it doesn't, are you saying that you are so full of self-righteousness that your right to spit in the face of someone is more important than that person's health? Or, even if the mask does nothing, that person's peace of mind? No. So I absolutely, and so don't get me wrong. As far as your friend, Lord Seth, I'm sure that, if they're not being allowed to go to church, that sucks. But The same thing that happened in the United States when Corona was really on the rise, and a lot of states said, okay, no large gatherings. That means you guys churches. You know what our church did? Our church started meeting virtually, right? And it's not that hard to do. And you know what? Even a small church can do it, because all you need is, if you have no budget, you get one person with an iPhone to stream it. It's not that hard. All right, so you can absolutely do it. It may not be the same caliber and quality that we've always wanted, but it will work in a pinch. So for people to get all worked up over it is just aggravating, because you're basically fighting for the right to offend others. You're fighting for the right to make others sick. And so, yeah, you have fun with that. I'm not going to do it. And so, you know what? I don't like wearing those stupid masks. I hate wearing those stupid masks. But you know what? Every time I go into a store, I put on the dang mask. I don't want to. I don't like it, but I do it. And, you know, and the thing is, if you don't want to wear a mask, then order home delivery. If you don't want to wear a mask, go to a store that allows you to not wear a mask. But don't spit in the face of their policies. They have the right to protect their customers. And I know that's not exactly what it was about, Lord Seth, but I just had to get that off my chest. Carlos says, do you think America now is what they intended in for the beginning politically? Not at all. I think that we are on the fast track to tyranny, the tyranny of the two-party system. I think the Republicans and Democrats have completely convinced most voters that if you dare vote for anybody other than the Republicans and Democrats, that you're inviting the floodgates of doom. So now that Saru is free of his ganglia and armed with darts, he can become Nutrek's latest killing machine. Yeah. I think that's an interesting idea, but I thought it was also like, really, Saru was more interesting as honestly as a coward than he is as Mr. Badass. Most pagans tend to avoid Christian types. Took months to convince some of them to come and watch your Sunday streams. You have changed many of their views on Christianity as a whole. Well, thank you, Valor, and I appreciate that. And if I can expose people to what Christianity is supposed to be, awesome. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I try. And at least, and I point to, Experience Community Church. You can see they post their sermons on YouTube and stuff. You want to see some deep dive stuff, it's great. I forgot to add your tag in my earlier message. Oh, that's already fed. Let's see. It says, I'm actually impressed that society functions as much as it does, given how impossible it seems to get people working on anything. Yeah, I know. You are right. Being told to wear a mask is no different than no shirt, no shoes, no service. Exactly. And I agree. I don't, you know what? It does not matter if you believe it works or not. It does not matter. Cinnamon said, I've never seen someone spit in the face of someone when they're told to wear a mask. I have. And I've seen like this one video of like a person who, when they asked them to wear a mask, they immediately started purposefully coughing all over the place. Stuff like that to just try and say, yeah, F you, I'm not wearing a mask. And I'm sorry, if that's the way you're going to be, you are a first-class jerk. And, and honestly, I hope you get trespassed off that property and never go back. And the funny thing is, I told my wife, it's like, at least it's easy to see who the a-holes are now. Because you go into the store, and the a-holes are the ones not wearing a mask. Because the stores, unfortunately, while they still have the posting saying, please wear a mask, they can't, they're not the police. They can't force people to do it physically. They could ask them to leave, and then every time that just causes problems. So they have to tolerate it. And so you just basically see, okay, these are the a-holes. These are the people that have no respect for their fellow man. And so when I see someone walking around the store without a mask, if it's somebody I know, I'll call them out on it. But I immediately think that person is a complete douche. Alexander says, these people have the right not to be infected. To wear a mask gives the right to health to the others. If you are anti-mask, you do the Momo challenge. Yes, I wrote it. Do it. Oh, you're saying if you don't want to wear the mask, do the Momo challenge? And let's see. Mr. Londell says the person with a compromised immune system should be wearing the mask and social distancing. Everyone else is okay not to wear a mask. First of all, Mr. Lundell, the science does not hold up to that. If everybody wore a mask, that does reduce transmission, period. And it is a known fact that you can be contagious with this particular virus and not have any symptoms. And, you know, even though it may not completely eliminate the possibility of infection, it will reduce it. And that is demonstrably true. And so, the main point of it, Mr. Lundell, is how about just not being a dick? You know what? If you don't want to wear a mask, then don't go anywhere that asks you to. And, period. And let's see. Jeff says, I wear a mask for 9 hours a day, 5 days a week at work. That sucks. See, I'm glad I work from home because that would drive me crazy. I don't like wearing a mask, but, you know, I do it when I'm asked to. Average Jeff says, when COVID passes or is successfully vaccinated, will you continue to wear a mask or return to the previous norm? I will return to the previous norm. I do not like wearing a mask. As soon as the stores say you don't have to wear a mask, I will stop wearing a mask. I hate wearing a mask. But I am also a person that respects other people. And if the stores feel for the safety of their customers, they want everybody to wear a mask, I will absolutely wear that mask. It doesn't matter if I believe that the mask is going to prevent the disease or not. Everybody wants to make the argument that it doesn't help that much. You're irrelevant. If you are walking into a business and they say you need to wear a mask, then put on the dang mask. If you don't want to, go elsewhere. Jerry says, we basically had a two-party system since the early 19th century. It's part of American culture. It is, and that is why it is, since that time, it's been slowly dissolving. I love people saying masks don't work. I bet those people would be the first to complain or sue a doctor if they didn't wear one in a hospital during surgery. That's kind of funny. LDG says, love your logic. Not sure why. To be a pessimist, do you feel like a far less liberty-minded West is an inevitability at this juncture? Seems like there's little to demonstrate that people want it. Well, honestly, liberty has not been a priority in this country for some time, which is unfortunate. You know, that, and that's why I do tend to vote libertarian. Me and some of my friends are bisexual and are Christians. What do you think about that? I think that's okay. If that's a fact, that's a fact. However, as far as sexuality is concerned, look, is it a sin to have desires towards people of the same gender versus opposite gender? No. What is a sin is not what you desire. What is a sin is based on your actions. My aunt's Walmart, they actually have a police officer on duty, and if you're not wearing a mask, the officer will kick them out. Well, that's good, but not every Walmart can do that, unfortunately. And Mr. Lundell says, it's also a known fact that there's a 99% recovery rate for COVID-19. I don't go anywhere that requires a mask. Well, fine. Then don't go anywhere that requires a mask. I don't know what it's like in your state, Mr. Lundell, but right now in Tennessee, every business in the town that I live in has a sign in front saying, please wear a mask. So I wear a mask. Every single one. Every Walmart, every Publix, Home Depot, everywhere I've been, they have the sign saying, please wear a mask. Now, what our church did, and our church, I think, was very kind about this, is that they made it so that some services, masks are optional. Other services, masks are required. That way, for people that really just have to not wear a mask, they can go to one of the services where masks are optional. Robert says, you should check out Robert Breaker on YouTube. He did a video a few months ago giving all the biblical scripture and reasons for not wearing these masks. He's a Baptist pastor. Well, I would probably have a very difficult time with a video like that because, the funny thing is it's always about my rights, my rights, my rights. Anyone who wants to try to say, well, it's the mark of the beast. I'm sorry. No, it's not. It's called public safety. And There is no biblical reason to not wear a mask. And in fact, there are biblical reasons to wear a mask. My biggest problem with the mask is people wearing the mask badly. I just put it under my nose so I can breathe. Why are you wearing? Oh, I agree. And I that was the one thing. I didn't particularly care for the South Park pandemic special. I thought it was a little gratuitous with some of the graphic content. But I did like the fact that they started calling the masks chin diapers. As you probably know, I work at a library with signs multiple places. Masks are required. If someone comes in without a mask, then we ask them to put one on. If they don't, if they ask for help from us, we tell them that the library administration has stated we don't have to help them. But if we tell them the self-service things, they can do in the building. We see the problem is if a mask is required, then the mask should be just straight up required. And I understand it's not your job to tackle someone and force them to put a mask on. But what happened to civility? Why can't we just, it's like, seriously, we fight over the personal liberty to wear a mask, and we don't care about the fact that we're stomping all over individual rights elsewhere. How does that make any sense? So you don't wear a mask to prevent the spread of influenza because in the UK, at least, COVID is now officially less deadly than the flu. You know what? I wear a mask because it's required. If it was not required, I probably wouldn't be wearing one. Because I really don't like them. And you know what? Granted, I don't want to get the flu. I really don't. But at the same time, I wear the mask right now because it's required. And if it gives my neighbors peace of mind, so be it. And Joe Biden donated $1.
What if a store required you to wear an armband that said, "I support Trump"? Would you wear it if you needed something from that store?
Interesting question, but that's very different. That's asking you to take a position. That is that I love Trump. And that would actually, that would create a very, very interesting set of circumstances. Now, no business in their right mind would do that. Because if Home Depot decided to make people wear an "I like Trump" or, armband in order to go into the store, guess what? Only Trump supporters are going to go into that store. And they're cutting off a significant amount of their business. And people will simply go to Lowe's or, Ace Hardware, or wherever they need to go for their hardware needs. And so, honestly, if they were trying to get me to take a political stance and I could simply go to another store where I didn't have to take that political stance, I would go to the other store. But if you're trying to make the argument about the mark of the beast thing, until such time as they actually try to make you wear an armband that pledges your loyalty to, the beast, or have the number 666 tattooed on your forehead, I'm going to stand with the mask is not a bad thing. Carlos says, "Love thy neighbor, wear a mask." Indeed. Piano Dean says, "I think the smokers should be required to wear a mask while they're smoking." That's an odd one. And let's see, Jeff's, let's see. And it says to me, an odd librarian see that all the time. Oh, yeah, the wearing a mask badly, indeed. I wear a mask 8 hours a day. When we wear it for a long time, you become used to it. After 30 minutes, I don't feel it anymore uncomfortable for people not wearing it often. I disagree, Alexander, because I'll wear it, like, when I've had it on when we first started going back to church, we had to wear it for 2 hour service, and it drove me crazy. I could not wait to get out to the car so I could take it off. It absolutely drove me crazy, but we wore it, So, I never heard anyone who passed through Caroga complaining about a mask. In fact, most people want a hazmat suit passing through Caroga. That is true. And not sure what that is. The Aberjam sending, but. Okay, so a little chart about leading causes of death, but that's kind of irrelevant. Do you honestly believe that there will ever be a time where masks are not required? I do not, and no paper or standard fabric masks do not prevent the disease has been claimed to reduce. Yes, but there is a difference. And if you're, they don't prevent the disease. But there is a difference as far as, are you saying there is a reduction? I would agree with you, Captain Track. If as far as do I think that there will ever be a time where masks are not required? Absolutely. Because as it is right now, like for example, in the state of Tennessee, there is no mandate from the government that you have to wear a mask. So, flu is number 8. COVID, not even on the chart, is number 24. That's kind of still irrelevant to the discussion. If you go into a business and they ask you to wear a mask, even if it's nothing else for the peace of mind of their other patrons, then wear the mask. Otherwise, don't go to that business, please. Aren't all Americans free as long as they don't infringe on others' freedom, as long as anyone is around, or so long as anyone is around, you are no longer free? Actually, Americans, people, the problem is America was built on the idea of personal liberty and freedom, but that hasn't been around for a long time. People just, it's funny because people argue about it only when it comes to little things like the masks, right? They don't care about the fact that everything else in their life is curtailed by the government. But, oh, you're going to make me wear a mask, and all of a sudden it's the end times. It's the Antichrist. You said you're wearing it because it's required, but you also previously admonished people for being selfish. Yeah, it's required. And you know what? If you're not going to follow the rules of a business, you are being a dick. Sorry. You just are. And don't get me wrong, Averjam. If you don't like the mask thing, fine. You are, but don't argue with me about the relative deadliness of coronavirus or the relative protection level of masks. Argue with the people making the policies, because you can convince me all day long. I'm still going to wear the mask if the business says please wear a mask. I mean that's the problem is that it's not just about the disease, right? But the thing is that people want to, when I was talking about the whole thing, like with the immune compromised people, and you're basically saying, I want to not wear a mask because it's my right. Meanwhile, you have a family there that has a kid that's disabled that could die if they get exposed to this virus, and they believe, regardless of it's true, they believe the mask can help. And so you're willing to rob that family peace of mind just so that you can proudly declare, I'm American and I'm not wearing my mask. No. I saw a report on the news where Colorado landlord told his tenants that if Biden wins the election, their rents will likely increase, perhaps double increase because of new taxes, increased regulations, raising minimum wage, etc. Well, I don't think that would suddenly happen overnight, and I think that people using those kinds of tactics, for whether you're for Biden or Trump, is wrong. Here, Master, you should vote for whatever candidate you agree with the most, which in my case is neither Biden nor Trump. Here, masks are mandatory. You can be arrested for not wearing them. The police keep extra enforcement powers. Well, again, this is an unusual circumstance, and so just wear the dang mask, and when the pandemic is over, then if they want, and that's really the test of it. Where tyranny comes in is if, okay, the pandemic ends, right? Eventually they're going to vaccinate this thing. Eventually it's going to get, to what they call herd immunity and all that crap. Once that happens, if everybody still says, oh, no, you still got to wear a mask, now you got a case. All right? But until then, sorry. Really, you're saying that not wearing a mask for COVID is selfish, and you say the mortality rate is irrelevant even though you won't wear it for a deadlier flu. Averjam, I already told you. It's not you can throw the statistics at me all day long. You're not sure if if people wore a full-on respirator and all that, you would reduce the transmission of all disease by a significant amount. All right, that's an absolute fact. If everybody just wore a hazmat suit every time they left the house, guess what? We would eliminate many diseases within a matter of weeks. So, sure, that would help, but you know what? At what point does it become, kind of silly? Now, as far as the COVID situation, it's not about, you say, oh, well, COVID is not as deadly as the flu. The reason the COVID is not as deadly as the flu is in part because we've been taking steps to prevent its transmission. And COVID is more contagious than the flu. Fortunately, it's not particularly deadly. If it was, then we would all be panicking about getting hazmat suits and all that. But fortunately for us, this particular strain of COVID-19 is not, or COVID-19, the coronavirus, is not a particularly deadly one. In that case, we are quite lucky. But it transmits like crazy. And that's what the masks are for. If we just simply say, screw it, then all of a sudden the numbers start going back up. And while it may be number 24 on the list right now, was it number 24 on the list 3 months ago? What would you do if someone blew a giant cloud of vape in your face and you were in a chin? What would you do if someone blew a giant cloud of vape in your face and you were in chin diaper mode? Well, first of all, if somebody was blowing a giant cloud of vape in my face, it's rude anyway, regardless of whether I'm in chin diaper mode or not. We have had times where masks were required. It didn't last forever, and like with the gas masks in World War II, we don't have them now. It's for a purpose. It's if not just to make you feel safer. I agree with that. Alexander says the Red Army plays against Chinese hockey club. I need to watch that. Missed all the games this season. Job. Don't give up on the mask. I support you. Thank you, Alexander. Wesley says, "How are you?" I'm doing okay, Wes. You always show up right when I'm about to wrap it up because I got to work here in just a little bit. Robert John says, "You're not just arguing rules, bro. You are being scathing to people who don't wear masks by calling them selfish, not just because of following rules. I'm calling them selfish because they're putting their own personal comfort above the comfort of others. So yes, that is selfish by definition. And don't get me wrong, yes, there are rules in place, right? And so right now, those rules say you need to wear a mask, and you can argue about how effective masks are. You would make that argument to the people enforcing said rules or writing said rules. However, you also have people who feel more peaceful because there are people that won't go out that are genuinely afraid of this virus because they may have people in their family that have compromised immune systems and stuff like that. And so they won't go out unless they can go somewhere where everybody's wearing a mask. But you want to say, I ain't wearing a mask because I don't want to wear a mask because they don't really work. And so I'm going to walk around here and not wear a mask despite the fact that everybody tells me I should wear a mask. And then that family over there, oh, screw them. That is selfish. So yes, it's a two-tiered thing because one, there's the rule itself. If you don't like the rule, argue with the rule makers. And two, there's common decency. If you're going into a place that has established rules, you follow those rules. If you don't want to follow those rules, you don't go to that place. And I will tell you, and Corey mentioned this last night, hundreds of people left our church over the masks because our church actually had the gall to require people to wear masks when the governor asked us to require people to wear masks. Well, too bad. And if your salvation as a Christian is so flimsy that you're willing to throw it away because you don't want to wear a mask, I would dare say you were not a Christian in the first place. Some states have medical exemptions from wearing these masks, such as being diabetic and so forth, since I'm a diabetic. And that's kind of funny. Because, first of all, and if you haven't seen, there's a YouTube channel called Legal Eagle. Interesting guy. Sometimes I like him, sometimes I disagree with him. But he is a lawyer, and he talks about legal issues in movies and stuff like that, which is fun. But he also gets into some of the serious topics and talking about these medical exemptions. First of all, isn't it funny that all of a sudden there's like 8 million medical conditions that would make you not be able to wear a mask, and people say that they have problems breathing, and they start claiming Americans with Disabilities Act and stuff like that. But they're ignoring the spirit of the Americans with Disabilities Act. What the Americans with Disabilities Act says is that a business has to make reasonable accommodation, assuming it does not compromise the safety of the business, its employees, or its patrons. That is in the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so there are reasonable accommodations that can be made. If you can't wear a mask, guess what? You can get curbside delivery. Guess what? You can have it delivered to your house. Guess what? There are plenty of options that don't include you walking into the store without a mask and just parading around being a dick. And don't get me wrong, Robert, I'm not calling you a dick. I'm just saying that there are reasonable accommodations for people who genuinely cannot wear a mask. And that's why businesses offer curbside pickup. That's why they offer delivery services. And so, take advantage of that. Or it says they said wear a mask during sex and don't do it. A doctor in Europe told my friend who wanted her implant out to try for a kid. The doctor said, no, not this time. What? Wear a mask during sex? Okay, Lord Seth, that's weird. Sean says there is not herd immunity for the common cold. There's no guarantee that COVID will have herd immunity. Well, true, but you know what? If we do get... There's also no vaccine for the common cold, but there likely will be a vaccine for COVID-19. And I'm not a doctor. I know that there's a difference between the way that the common cold works versus like influenza and stuff like that. But, I'm not going to argue about that because I'm not an expert on it. Though I respect the confidence of it, that whole American my rights supersede all others and arrogance of their innate superiority has kind of irked this Aussie. Well, it's not just you. It irks me too. Because quite frankly, I don't like when people get so full of themselves that they want to put their own convenience above others. I don't like that. Trustin says, I have kidney transplant, so try to keep a low profile, and I wear a mask, and I'm grateful most people in my town wear masks as well. Yeah, and you know what? I've had kidney failure in my past, so I'm technically high risk, and I do wear a mask, and I don't like it, but I will continue to wear a mask until such time as hopefully it is safe. Oh, man, I do need to wrap it up here in a minute, so I can't guarantee I'm going to get to your chats if you just now putting it in, but I will try to get through a few more and then wrap it up. Carlos says, we have vacancy for the flu. I assume you mean vaccine for the flu. Probably not everyone gets the flu. The problem is not everyone gets a flu jab, which is why it still spreads, but at a lesser rate. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't want the flu jab this year. Well, you know what? I get that. There have been years where I've gotten the flu shot. I've never heard it called the jab, but on years that I haven't. But yeah, we've had an influenza vaccine for a long time, and then they just try to get it to match mutated strains each year, which they'll probably end up doing with coronavirus. Once they develop this vaccine for general coronavirus, then if there's ever another outbreak, we'll be able to very quickly get another vaccine out. I have asthma and a low iron shortage. I don't go out except to a friend's house 2 times. I haven't been out this year. It's been rough for a lot of people, Aberjan says, transmission is irrelevant. You said yourself it is more... I can't... my brain is not wrapping around, but I assume you've seen more contagious, if you will, than the flu. But even so, it's still killing fewer people. Right. How about 3 months ago? Was it killing fewer people than the flu 3 months ago? Darth Maul says, how are the fleas? Well, as far as I can tell, dead. Piano Dean says, I'm not a big conspiracy guy, but it's pretty easy to believe China manufactured this thing in a lab with the intent to ravage us because Trump was about to make that deal with them. I don't know, Dean, because the problem is if China really wanted to, if this was the whole Chinese manufactured a virus to plague the world, why not make something a little deadlier? Wesley says, this stream is too early for me. Sorry, my friend. Bird says, damn it, I was scratching my screen trying to get the dirt off, and it's from your video, not dirt on the screen. Oh, okay. Oh, that I assume that right there. Yeah, that's just like a little flaw in the green screen behind me. Sorry. Aberjab says, you know why people are scared? Because of fear-mongering over a relatively undeadly virus by mandating mass lockdowns and isolation unnecessarily. Let me see here. Let's see. And and just try to see if there is a good solid number that okay, so it looks like at least according to Google, and I don't know how recently this was updated, but 1.15 million deaths So, yeah. 1.15 million. Now, granted, we've done a lot to curb that. And part of that, guess what? Lockdowns and masks. I must say, despite all the problems in the world today, we're also part of a historic time as well. 4 more Islamic nations have signed peace agreements with Israel. Very cool. I didn't know that. Piano Dean says Legal Eagles video on Measure of Man was really interesting. It actually was. I did like that's how I first found his channel, was his Measure of a Man video. Robert says, unfortunately, no home delivery here in this small town I live in. I'll bet you though that one of the stores would do curbside for you. At least I would hope so. 3 months ago, I literally almost every death was registered as a COVID death. Okay. Piandine says, because look at the damage done by the not deadly one world went nuts. Anyway. Well, and I do think, and I've said this on my channel, I said this back in like March or April, that I do think that it was an overreaction for every country to shut down their economy. I thought that was a mistake. I don't have a problem with masks. I don't have a problem with, stay at home when you're not working. But I think shutting down the economy for a matter of weeks and in some cases months was a big mistake. Because the repercussions of that are going to last for a long time. Lord says, I believe China manufactured you in a lab. Mrs. Handchecker is actually your handler, and Joshua's code name for Joshua. If activated, program will burn the atmosphere. All hail CPing. Wow. That was just weird, Lord Seth. So with that, I am going to wrap it up, my friends. It's been a lively conversation, as always. Whenever we get into COVID, it always turns into a lively conversation. But I don't know if you're still there, Alexander, so I'm going to wrap it up, but I'm going to send you your favorite thing in the whole world because you were nice today.
The board vessel's moving into range.
On screen.
Let's get lost in that magic place all alone now. Drink a fill from my fountain of love, wet your lips. I'm a man, I'm a teaser, I'm a man, well I'm a virgin, I'm a man, I'm a one-night stand, a man, I'm a man, I'm a man, I'm a dream, I'm a dream divine, make love together.
He's dead.
Let's get lost. Hey, you want to learn about Jesus?
There's no such thing as hooker-client confidentiality.
There you go. Just for rock solid. Special shout out from Amber Jam. And of course it didn't play again. Oh yeah, there it is.
Hey, you want to learn about Jesus?
There's no such thing as hooker-client confidentiality.
Good night, everybody. Or day, or what? It's something.